Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping veterans turn into rock stars every single day. You can learn more about what Operation Encore is doing by going over to their website at www.operationencore.org. That is www.operationencore.org. If you can give them a hand, just click that little donate button or follow all of their social medias and learn exactly what they are doing to change the lives of our veterans every single day. Hey, welcome everybody to Two Drunk Dudes in a Gun Room, man. I am stoked to be here today. It's been a minute since I've been on. So let's talk about what's coming today, man. We have got another fellow podcaster that is coming on, and I was actually on his show. I am a huge fan. I listen and subscribe, and I think you guys will too by the time we're done with it. So let's introduce Scott Deluzio. Is an Army veteran, having served 6 years with the Army National Guard, including a deployment to Afghanistan in 2010. Scott's brother, Stephen, was also deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. Unfortunately, Stephen was killed in action on August 22nd, 2010. After returning home, Scott struggled with coping with the stresses of combat, the loss of his younger brother, and adjusting back to civilian life. In the years following Scott's deployment, he noticed other veterans dealing with their struggles in unhealthy ways. Scott started his podcast, Drive On Podcast, to connect with current and prior service members. He interviews veterans and civilians to discuss personal triumphs, life experiences, and emotional hardships. Give hope and strength into the military community. Let's bring on Scott Deluzio. What's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going? I'm glad to be here and good to see you again.
Man, I'm going to tell you, since I've been on your show, I have seen your podcast pop up in so many different locations. I said, man, I never even knew, but like all these other podcast related forums and stuff, I'm seeing you on there, man. So I know you're busy at it.
I am. I just recorded I think it's 367th episode of the show.
Wow.
And this was over about 4.5 years since I started it. And I look back and I'm like, I can't believe time just flies. I just enjoy it. Just having these conversations with other veterans and folks who are out there trying to improve the lives of veterans. And it's like, that's kind of what it's all about. So.
Yeah. Well, man, if you don't mind, why don't you give everybody a quick little rundown of who Scott Deluzio is?
Who Scott Deluzio? That could be a rabbit hole we go down. Folks might be a little traumatized at the end of this little intro here, but yeah. So, like you said, I served about 6 years in the Army National Guard, deployed to Afghanistan. I was an infantryman. Did a lot of the typical infantry grunt stuff. Going on patrols and all that kind of stuff. Since getting out, doing this podcast has kind of been my way of giving back to the military community and continuing to serve in a way. I know it's not with a rifle or wearing the uniform anymore. It's a much different service, and I'm not trying to minimize anything that anybody else is doing as far as their service goes. But it's a way to give back to the folks who serve and who have served. And so that's that's kind of what I've been doing for the last few years.
Absolutely, man. I don't think a lot of people realize that what it takes to, one, be a podcaster, and two, to be part of service, helping veterans. I mean, it is a full-time job. And I had no idea. Oh yeah. I still, to this day, I joke because, before I started podcasting, I used to say that, content creators were the millennial panhandlers. Go get a real job, man. I was so wrong. My millennials, I am sorry. I admit it. I was wrong, man. There is a lot of work that goes into this stuff.
There is a lot of work, and you know what? I think if I was a panhandler, I'd make way more money. doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I've made any. I mean, I'm probably negative, maybe, I don't know, 3,000 over the
Yeah,
years.
exactly. With all the equipment and everything. And the thing is, when I started, the whole idea was to provide content and information to folks that needed it in a way that was easily accessible. Podcasts are free to listen to for anybody. You just need access to the internet basically to get access to it. Apps on your phone and things like that, but you got to be able to download it. And that to me was the goal. Was like, how do I make this free and easy for folks to find this information? And so like, okay, I'll do a podcast. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. But then I was thinking to myself, I don't know how the hell to do a podcast. I've never done a podcast before. I didn't know any of the equipment that I might need. I didn't know how to edit the audio or the videos, or I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. So the first maybe half a dozen episodes or so that I did of the show, if you go back and listen to them, they're probably complete trash. But the first like half a dozen episodes, I didn't tell anyone other than my wife that I was planning on doing a podcast. I only told her because she was curious about what's this big long arm with the microphone and what's this all for? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm trying out this podcast thing. We'll see how it goes. But once I kind of got the hang of it, I was like, okay, you know what, this is something I think I might be able to do, and obviously you improve over time, with figure out different ways of editing and streamlining your whole process and everything like that. But I just jumped in. I was like, screw it, I'll do it. I'll just figure out how to do it.
That's the veteran mentality right there, man. So let's kind of back up, because you did just say one thing that made me want to ask. So real quick before we get into your military career, did you find podcasting to have a form of therapy as well?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I first started, it not quite as much, because I think it was more me figuring out the technical side, the nitty gritty details of how do I even upload an episode to let people listen to this stuff like that. Yeah. That was where I was in the beginning, the first little bit. But then I noticed when I started talking to other veterans on the show, and I had guests on the show, and I was talking to them and asking them the questions about like, what was it like for you to get out of the military and transition to civilian life, and or cope with the loss of a friend while you were deployed, or you name it, all these different things. And you start talking to these people, and some of them who I'd be talking to, never met them before. We had the conversation, but by the end of the episode, the half hour to an hour long episode or whatever it was, it felt like I've known these people for years, and one of the things that I found over the years is that one of the biggest things that people are missing when they get out of the military is that camaraderie, that sense of belonging in a group of people. And for me, like I don't have that big group of people. The folks that I served with, I lived in Connecticut. I was in the Connecticut National Guard at the time. I moved out to Arizona. So a lot of those folks that I served with are still back there in Connecticut. And so I don't have that group of people who I served with to go, hang out with and grab a drink or, whatever with them from time to time. I'm thousands of miles away. So then I start having these conversations with other people, and it kind of brings you back. And so, yeah, in a way, it's kind of that form of therapy that that allows you to get that camaraderie back that you might be missing. And it goes both ways too, because then you got the guest on the other side who's doing that same kind of conversation. And we like, sometimes at the end we're like, yeah, this really does feel like, we've known each other for quite some time,
Yep. No, absolutely, man. For me, it was about 3/4 of the way in season 1 when I realized, holy crap, I am starting to talk about things that I ain't talked about with anybody,
Right.
And it's that release that you get, because you make a little bit more room and a little bit more room and a little bit more room, and then pretty soon you get to the point where you're actually analyzing and dealing, and you're putting in the work without even realizing it. And I think that's a big part.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things that I didn't even realize was happening, but it was happening,
Yep.
was that the guests would be sharing something that they went through, their whatever their struggle was, and maybe it wasn't the struggle that I went through, but it was something maybe similar to something that I was dealing with.
Hmm.
And they talked about how they kind of made things make sense in their own mind. And I was like, holy shit, I never thought about that. You know,
Yeah.
like I just it just didn't even register with me to think that way. And then I'm hearing the guests talk about it, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And I start, using that mindset that they bring up, and got hundreds of episodes of content with each one of them has something, useful, and some of it, kind of gets repeated over time, but it's good to have that reminder every once in a while
Mhm.
too, you know?
Oh, absolutely, man. So let's dig into the old military career, man. So what brought you to the military? Where did you
So
come out of high school or?
no, I didn't actually. So I grew up in a very strongly patriotic family. We grew up kind of looking at the folks who put on a uniform, doesn't matter what branch of the service, or law enforcement, firefighters, the EMTs, whoever. Um, we looked at all of them as kind of like the superheroes. They're the ones who go out and risk themselves for other people, for complete strangers, right?
Mhm.
And they go out and do these things, and um, so that's kind of how we grew up. My grandfather was in the Navy in World War II, but it kind of skipped a generation. My parents' generation, they didn't serve in the military. They were uh, just shy of Vietnam. The draft ended, like, I think they were probably 17 when the draft ended. So,
Okay.
plus that war kind of put the fear of going to war and seeing your people that you knew from high school coming back home, wounded or not coming home at all. That kind of put that fear in them. And so, that generation kind of skipped, joining the military. Then after high school, I went to college. And while I was in college, 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And um, I had considered just dropping out of out of college right there and joining the military, because I knew there was going to be some sort of fight that was going to happen. I was like, screw it, I want in.
Yeah.
But I also knew myself, and I said, if I don't finish what I started, I'm never coming back here to finish my degree.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm already partway through. I might as well stick it out, finish my degree, and if there's going to be a fight, it's probably still going to be there after I get out. So, and turns out I was right times like five.
Yeah.
um, but so I was like, I'll circle back to this sometime down the line. And I graduated college, got a job, did the typical 9 to 5 type thing, the way a lot of people did. And my first year out of college, my younger brother had gone to Norwich University up in Vermont, military school. That's where the ROTC was formed, and like first ROTC school was up there. And he was in the Corps Cadets. He was a cadet, and did all that kind of stuff. But he got introduced to the National Guard from another student who was there, and he went to one of the drills, or a couple of the drills, and he was like, "This is what I want. I want to do this." So he ended up joining the army while he was in college, and so all of a sudden, my little brother goes from being this kid I used to pick on when we were younger, and horse around in the yard and get in trouble with, and all that kind of stuff, um, to now being elevated to the superhero status that in my mind I had, for the military. And I was like, holy crap, that's awesome. Like, I was super proud of him for making that decision. A couple months later, I heard a report in the news that said that the military was struggling to meet their recruiting numbers, and this was like 2005.
Mhm.
And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, 9/11 just happened. All these songs and all these people saying never
Yeah.
forget and all this kind of stuff. I was like, where are all these people who said they're never going to forget? They're going to, do what they need to do to, go get the guys who did this. Where did all those people go? And I realized, holy crap, I was one of those people, and I still haven't done anything. And so I said, okay, I'm still young enough. I'm still fit. I'm capable. I knew a little bit more about what the National Guard was, because my brother was in the National Guard. I was like, okay, so like I can still do my regular job and be in the National Guard at the same time. And
Mhm.
I was like, okay, well, let me do that. And so that's how I got into the Army. Actually, I I didn't at the time. I didn't know the difference between the reserves and the National Guard,
Mhm.
and so I found I just went to the this was back 2005. We still use phone books from time to time, and such. I went to the phone book and I found Army Reserve Recruiting Office, and I went there, and they're like, nope, that's not the National Guard, and they didn't have any uh, uh, units for the type of work I wanted to do, the MOS I wanted, in the reserves in Connecticut. So they directed me over to the National Guard, and so yeah, that's I was probably the easiest sell that the recruiter could have possibly had, because I just walked in. I was like, where do I sign? It was like, I don't you don't have to sell me on bonuses or any of that. I just want in, like, just get me in, and that's what happened.
Yeah, the recruiter was sitting there going, "Let me pinch myself. Am I
I,
dreaming?"
yeah, right. Yeah,
So you went in as 11 Bravo, right?
I did. Yes. Yeah.
What made, was it because of 9/11? Is that what made you select that MOS or?
Well, I did want to fight. Um, yeah, partially because of 9/11, but also because that was a MOS that my brother chose,
Okay.
and not to uh, talk down or talk badly about any other MOSs or anything like that, because I they're all they all have their purpose and everything like that. But I wasn't gonna let them one up me like that, like the typical brother, sibling rivalry, and where at Thanksgiving he'd be like, "Oh, my job's tougher than yours," and blah blah blah. And I was like, I don't want that bullshit. I just want to have, uh, you know, I just want to have, kind of level ground with him. And so actually throughout our entire uh, enlistments, we were both the same rank, going all the way through. It just happened to work out that way,
Mhm.
pretty much throughout the whole time. So when I enlisted, I enlisted because I had a college degree. Uh, they allowed me to have E4 right off the bat. And so he had already been in for a little bit, and so he had worked his way up to E4, and so at that point we were the same rank throughout the rest of our time in the military.
Yeah. And I could just see how your Thanksgiving would go. You go to come into the table to sit down, and right there's a sign that says Pogue, and he's gonna
Yeah,
be like, "Yeah, that's your seat."
yeah, yeah. It would be like in the corner or something,
Yep.
like not even at the dinner table, just be, and it would be like a shitty MRE on the seat or something.
Yep. For the listeners out there that don't know, Pogue stands for person other than grunt. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's what everybody else like me gets called by all the infantry guys.
yeah, it's used as a you know a half somewhat derogatory term, but also as a, in a loving way too,
Yeah.
like you'd call your best buddy a jerk or something like that, like
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And the Army is full of this. The airborne calls other people that are not airborne legs,
yep.
and
But
I
as soon as
never
they
did.
touch the ground, their legs too. Don't let
Yep.
them fool you.
And I never understood, like, where does the derogatory come from that? You know, that your legs carry you around, your
Yeah,
legs make you run. I mean, legs are pretty handy to have.
I know, right? Yeah, and unless you break them on the fall when you come down.
Yeah. And I have seen plenty of that, lots of ankles and
Yeah,
everything else. So you're in the National Guard, and your brother was also in the National Guard, right?
that's right. Yeah.
And were you guys both in the same unit too?
Well, no. So he was in the Vermont Army National Guard,
Okay.
and I was in the Connecticut Army National Guard, both infantrymen, but different units, obviously. Um, and that was like when we first enlisted. It was like not even there's no connection to our units whatsoever. But partway through, I want to say like 3 or 4 years into my enlistment, um, the there was some restructuring of the units in that area, and both of our units wound up being under the same brigade. So there was a 86 Brigade Combat Team, and our units both ended up under that same brigade. So there's a whole stuff that went on as far as changing over, and you have different unit patches and all that kind of stuff that goes along with it. But with that, when we were deployed to Afghanistan, it was a brigade-wide deployment. So his unit and my unit all got deployed. And I think our deployment was one of the biggest deployments of National Guard soldiers since World War II.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, for everybody out there who thinks that it's just 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, that quit basically, let's see, August 31st, 2001. After that, man, you guys, that whole once a year, 2 weeks, shit was out the window, man.
That's right. Yeah.
Whether it be deployments, even, a lot of people don't realize this. We were so short in the military that the units didn't have anybody left to run the bases.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the Iowa National Guard come to the unit I was in just to run our battalion because everybody was deployed.
Yeah.
And so there was multiple movements going on. And then you had the ones like yourself that went forward and was stuck over there a year. And you had other jobs back here in the States that you used to do. A lot of business owners, people don't understand that the dedication that comes from our reserves and National Guard elements is beyond anything, because those guys may have $100,000 a year businesses that they're living on, and now they're being paid deployed, can't run their business, E4 pay.
Yep. Yeah. And which is not great.
No,
it's not replacing that money. But the other thing too that people I don't think understand with that, especially when you're talking about a business owner who is also in the National Guard or reserves or whatever, when they leave, their clients, their customers, they still need to get whatever the products or services are that they were providing, and they go someplace else. And when they come back, those customers are like, well, I found somebody else who can do this for me. I don't need you anymore. And so now their businesses are shot, and so that is, a casualty of war, if you will, right? Like it totally destroys some of these businesses. Now, sometimes they're lucky and they can have a spouse or another family member who can help out along the way to kind of keep things moving for the year that they're gone. But they're not always that lucky where they can do that kind of thing. But the one nice thing that I found with the National Guard, and I'm sure the reserves are the same, is that, and I was never in an active duty unit, but I got to imagine that the thing that the National Guard reserves have over the active duty is that you have folks who do have other jobs. And so in our unit, we had mechanics, we had law enforcement, we had firefighters, we had EMTs, we had all this wide range of folks. I was an accountant, we had so many different backgrounds. So when you're downrange, when you're overseas, things go wrong. Well, the trucks that we had, one of the mechanics that we had in our unit, civilian job mechanic, he was an infantryman, but civilian job, he worked as a mechanic. Well, he worked on trucks that had the same type of engine that the trucks had over in Afghanistan. So he was able to look at our trucks and be like, oh yeah, this thing needs to be replaced, that thing needs to be replaced, this thing needs to be tightened, or whatever. And we didn't need to wait for the mechanics to okay, put it in the queue for all the diagnostics and stuff. He could just go over to him and say, hey, this is what needs to be done. They can sometimes just hand him the parts and he would just go fix it, and then the trucks would be back up. And so like you get that kind of benefit where, not to say that you can't have that in an active duty unit, but a lot of times you get guys who they graduate high school and their very first job is the Army or whatever the branches that they serve in, and they don't get that experience that they would even be able to bring that to the table. All they ever get to train on is what their job is. And so, that's something I think that is nice about the reserve components are that they do get that civilian kind of experience as well that they can bring to the table.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. And, I was a mechanic when I came in the military. So I can tell you, being right out of high school and then signing up to be a mechanic, I did not have the knowledge that somebody who was National Guard or reserves that was a civilian mechanic had, because the Army is like 30 years behind in technology,
Right.
So your buddy was probably like, man, this stuff is simple. And
Yeah.
then he probably discovered really quick that the mechanics that was working on the stuff over there probably weren't up to the same standards as he was.
I don't know, because I wouldn't be in a position where I could judge any of that kind of stuff. I might be able to judge some of the finance guys, but I think everyone can kind of judge them.
I think we all did.
Yeah, at one point or another, someone's pay got screwed up.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2010. So you come in 2005, and 2010 is that y'all's first deployment?
That's my first deployment. Yeah, my brother was deployed to Iraq. He was in Ramadi in 2006.
What a shithole.
Yeah, that was terrible. He came back and he's like, I don't even want to talk about it because it was just that bad. And so he was actually in Iraq while I was in basic training, and I forget exactly how this came up, but I think that one of the drill sergeants was telling us a story about something that had happened in Iraq, in Ramadi at the time, because it was such a shithole. Everything was popping off like pretty much every day. There were multiple times a day things were going off over there. And I remember walking up to him afterwards, and like, you don't usually approach a drill sergeant that way, but I walked up to him and I'm like, listen, my brother's there. Here's his name. If you could just look out for it. And, I didn't understand like Red Cross messages and all that kind of stuff. I was just like, I just worry about him. And he's like, he looked at me like, yeah, I get it. Like, I got you, and that was like one of the rare, like, treat you like a human kind of moments, but like, he got it. Like, so that was, and then he told me to get the fuck out of his face, but.
Have you ever wondered how you can help out the show? Well, that is very simple. You can help us out by going to www.twodrunkdudesinAgunroom.com. That is www.twodrunkdudesinAgunroom.com. There's many ways you can help us by listening to the show, supporting the show, liking, sharing, and everything else that comes along with social media. But one of our biggest goals is to help build the nonprofit Heroes Voice Media Foundation. This is a foundation that has decided to start celebrating courage and amplifying heroes. Find your voice with Heroes Voice Media Foundation. Casey ended it.
Yeah.
Back to business as usual.
Back to business.
I can relate, man. So my last deployment was Ramadi, and
okay.
Yeah, it was a shithole, man.
What year was that for you?
2012.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I retired in 14. So yeah, it was a shithole.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know, but Ramadi, man, is surrounded by the city of Ramadi, and you go through the city, and it's a war zone, man, between the roundabouts and stuff going through that city. And yeah, it's a shithole, man.
Yeah.
So you come out 2010. Now your brother's got a little bit over you now. You may be the same rank, but he's got some.
He's got some more experience. Definitely. Yep.
And then so Afghanistan, you all get word that you all are going to Afghanistan. What area in Afghanistan were you guys going to operate?
So we're in the eastern part of Afghanistan. Where I was located was an area called Torkham, and it's right
Mhm.
on the border with Pakistan. Like our base, there's a hill mountain kind of thing on top of our base.
Yep.
You go up there, you're looking into Pakistan.
If,
And
if I remember, that's northeastern, right?
yep. So if you look at a map, the furthest, like, there's this little, almost like jut out, and like
Mhm.
that little point right there, that's it's almost like a finger pointing into Pakistan, and
Yep.
that's where Torkham is. Um, and so our job there was basically securing the border
Yeah.
area, because that was a uh, hub kind of where all of I think it was about 80% of NATO supplies would come through there.
Mhm.
Um, so for listeners who maybe aren't familiar with the geography and everything of Afghanistan, it's a landlocked country, but a lot of our supplies get sent over on cargo ships,
Yep.
and it's kind of difficult to get to when you're landlocked. So they come off the boat in Pakistan, they get loaded up on a truck, and then they drive through Pakistan, and they come across the border. But we're there kind of as like a show of force to make sure that those trucks did get through, and also to kind of uh, keep account of the trucks that were coming through, because okay, now we know, 10 trucks came through today, that were, carrying NATO supplies. Um, you know, uh, expect those to be showing up in, Bagram within the next day or two, or
Mhm.
whatever their destination was. That was kind of part of the deal too. But yeah, so we would do that, and then we'd also, um, it was a high foot traffic area as well, and so we would just randomly grab civilians who were walking across the border and just check them for, first off, were they carrying any weapons, or anything dangerous, or anything like that. And then we had biometric screening, and we were able to kind of check them to see, were their fingerprints found on a bomb that had exploded
Yeah.
weeks or months or whatever ago, and just random sample of people, and just try to find those types of people. So that was kind of part of our job, to kind of secure that area, and also just because of the high concentration of people, we'd always just check for those types of things.
And I am 100% positive that we were not the only ones that used that supply route. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
that in the wintertime, that's where the fighting happened. They
Hmm.
all went from Kandahar back up into the caves and in the and trying to win a war that has open borders all the way around it is tough, you
Yeah,
know.
and it's just an interesting way of life there, because what I learned about the people there is that when the borders were drawn between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and kind of the surrounding regions there, um, they're very tribal there, and
Yep.
um, it's like, well, yeah, but my uncle lives on the other side of that border. I'm going to see my uncle. Like, I'm just going to go. Like, I don't care that you drew a line here and said this is a border between here and there. Like, that line doesn't mean anything to me. I'm going over there because that's where my family is.
Yep.
It's like if you're to draw a line down the middle of your kitchen and be like, okay, you can get to the refrigerator and the stove, but the microwave is in another country and you can't go over there. It's like, well, screw you, I'm going there anyways. I want to, warm up,
Yep.
so, whatever, like that's just what the mentality is over there. It's like they don't really give a shit about the border,
Right.
the line that's there, but that makes it, all the more difficult for folks like us who, we want to kind of keep track of what's going back and forth, and
Yep.
especially the bad guys who are going back and forth.
Yeah. And we can't cross that border.
No. Oh my
You
God.
can't even shoot towards it and have a round go across that border. You
which
know.
which was difficult, because literally where we operated was the border. Like, there was a literal line drawn on the yellow line that was painted on the street, and we would walk right up to that line, but don't try to cross it, because one of our guys, he was walking, wasn't paying attention to where he was going, or he stumbled or something like that, and he did cross the line, and he got a buttstock to the face from one of the Pakistani soldiers. Like, don't cross the line. This is basically their message. Like, stay the hell out of our country, you know?
Yeah. I mean, they were hiding bin Laden, so I mean, of course.
Yeah, right. Like, don't get too close.
we knew that for years. You
Yeah.
know, we suspected that that's where he was at.
Yeah, and
You know,
I mean,
but
drone strikes were going off over there. Like, yeah, obviously we suspected stuff. Otherwise, we wouldn't be over there.
yeah. And again, you know, that northern area, the terrain just also makes it, you know, a 70-year-old guy will outwalk a 25-year-old SF operator, you know, up they're like billy goats, man. They go everywhere up those mountains quick.
Yeah.
You know, it is crazy.
Well, we actually, so where we were at our base, elevation wise, was probably about 2,500 feet above sea level. Where we were was not super high. There were mountains all around us, but our base was not super high. But we actually flew out to do some other missions in other parts of that area, and we would land on top of mountains. And some of the missions that we were on, the mountains were like 10,000 feet in elevation, and that kicks your ass when you go from like 2,500 feet straight up to 10,000 feet. Air is so much thinner up there, and it was like you're huffing and puffing. You feel like you've never PT'd ever when you're up that high that quick. You know, your body needs to adjust.
And those areas still have snow all the way up to like April.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
People think it's the desert. It must be 150 all year round. No, it gets cold.
It gets cold. Yeah. Well, and the weirdest thing that I experienced, this was like still when the temperatures during the day was like 115, 120, something like that. And then at night it got down to like 90, and I had to go grab my like winter clothes. I was so cold when in 90 degrees. I was wearing like the fleece, and I was wearing that, like the beanie. I was wearing all that shit because I was freezing after having been outside all day in 120 degree temperature. But you know, your body's sweating. You know, your clothes got all the sweat in it, all that kind of stuff. So that's doing its job of cooling you down. But then the temperature drops real quick, and it's like, holy crap, 90 degrees felt cold to me. That was the most bizarre thing I think I experienced.
Yeah. I had the same thing, and so I can definitely relate, man.
Yeah.
So you're over there. Was your brother in that same area, or was he in another part?
Yeah, he was in Paktia province, which was about, I want to say about 80 or 90 miles away from where we were. So when I got to Afghanistan, we never saw each other. We never spoke with each other. The only communication we really had with each other was kind of third party, like through my parents. Like if I got a chance to call home, they'd tell me what he was up to, and vice versa. You know, when he would call home, they would tell him what I was up to. But you know, it never got a chance to chat with him while we were over there.
So let's get into the day that you got the news. You were still deployed. You weren't home on leave or anything, right?
You're right. I was in Afghanistan. Yeah.
All right. So kind of walk us through how that day happened.
Yeah. So that day was one of those days where we were landed up on a mountain, got off the Chinook, landed on top of a mountain, middle of the night. You know, you have your night vision on, but you're walking off onto this uneven terrain, and day started off terrible for me because I was the first one to step off the helicopter. I got the green light from the door gunner. He's like, yeah, go. And I stepped off, and we were still about 3 or 4 feet in the air, and I'm carrying about 100 pounds on my back and my rucksack. and I fall down onto this uneven ground because you get very limited depth perception with the night vision. For anyone who hasn't worn them, it's very much like two-dimensional. Like you really don't get a ton of that 3D kind of images. And so estimating distance off the ground was really hard. I've never been in this area. It was difficult for me to judge it, and it was really uneven terrain. So I busted up my knee. Back got kind of messed up from that fall. I was hurting, but what are you going to do? You got a whole Chinook full of guys who are about to step on you and trample you. So you get up and you move, and so we kind of stayed up there until the sunrise. We were doing a joint operation with the Afghan army, and they didn't have night vision, so they were running blind when we were up there, and so we had to wait for the sun to come up, and then we went down to this village, did our operations, kind of searching for Taliban weapons. We had intel that they had stolen some Afghan army uniforms and all kinds of stuff like that. So we went through, found a bunch of stuff in these mud huts, which for folks who haven't been over there, I mean, you haven't seen this kind of poverty until you've been to a place like this. Like literally, when I say mud huts, the walls are made out of mud. They stack it up, and the heat from the sun kind of bakes them and makes some bricks out of them. But yeah, so we went into some of these buildings, or call them buildings, the little huts, and found some weapons, found some uniforms. But the Afghan army was taking the lead on this, so we didn't go into too many buildings. We were there kind of as backup for the Afghan army. So I kind of equate it to like driver's ed instructors. Like you're driving, you're behind the wheel. But if things go squirrely, the driver's ed guys, he's got the brake that he could pump on his side to kind of put things back into control. So, that's kind of what we were there for. And so, yeah, we go through the village, blow up whatever we could, burn the uniforms, did all that kind of stuff. And then as we were wrapping up, I got a call on the radio, said the commanding officer that was out on this mission, he was looking for me. And I was an E5, and I was like, CO doesn't go jump the chain of command like that, unless either you did something really good or you screwed something up big time.
Yep.
And I was like, I didn't really do anything great today. I mean, I did my job. I did what I was supposed to do, but like nothing spectacular. Like I wasn't getting any medals for the work that I did that day, let's put it that way. And then I was starting to rack my brain. I was like, what did I screw up? Did my guys lose some of their sensitive items, or, any of the military equipment or anything like that they were issued? I started checking all my guys, all their stuff, and making sure everything's still tied down. I had a list that I carried with me with every sensitive item. Sensitive item for the listeners are basically anything with a serial number on it. And so I checked everything down to the serial number, make sure everyone had everything. I was like, what the hell could he possibly want? But they wouldn't tell me over the radio. So I made my way back up the mountain with my busted up knee, my jacked up back, and I'm just like cursing Afghanistan at this point, because I'm like so fed up with this place. I was hot, I was miserable, I was just like, get me the hell out of here, like this is awful. So I got up to the top of the mountain, and our battalion sergeant major was there on this mission, and he was the first one to see me, but he wasn't the one to give me the news. But he saw me, and he goes, "Hey, come on over here and take your helmet off." I'm like, "What the like outside the wire? Like they don't ever tell you to take the helmet off. Like if that comes off, and especially this guy, if you knew him, like he was a stickler for PPE and all that kind of stuff. Like you keep that stuff on." And he's like, "Yeah, just take your helmet off. Come on over here, and the CO will be here to talk to you in just a minute. Just go over there and take a knee." And I was like, "Take a knee? That's the last thing I want to do with a busted up knee." But whatever. I'll do what I can. So CO comes over and he's like, I don't know how to tell you this, but I got some bad news. Your brother's unit was out on a patrol, and they were in an ambush, and he got hit. And so up until that point, never occurred to me that he wouldn't make it home at all. Like, it wasn't even a thought that crossed my mind.
Yeah.
I knew it was a possibility. I just didn't let myself think that way.
Yep.
Because that was something that just happens to other people. That's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen to my family. Like, we're going to be fine. So I'm thinking, okay, he's injured. And so I'm like, okay, well, what are the logistics? How do you get me to him, for moral support, or, does he need blood or something like that? Does he need a organ or something? I don't know, whatever the hell I can provide to him. I was like, let's figure out, how do I get to him? And so I can help him out whatever way I can. And the CO looked at me, he's like, obviously realizing he wasn't clear enough with that message. And he's like, no, I don't think you understand. He's been killed. And it was like a punch in the gut. Like, I couldn't breathe. Like, you ever been punched in the gut? Like, that feeling. And it was like my whole world just got turned upside down. I was, for the very first time, realizing that there's a life ahead that doesn't include him. And it just, like, computing that didn't make sense in my head.
Right.
I was like, he's supposed to get married like a year after we got back home. He was going to start a family. He was going to, have a life. He had just started his career. All these things. I was like, none of that's going to happen now. Like, what that just doesn't make sense to me. And it was just such a hard, tough pill to swallow. And being so far from home, not being around any family, obviously the guys I serve with, they're like family, they're, we're close and all that, but no blood relatives were around, and
Yeah.
so I had such a hard time with that. And I was just a wreck. But about 15-20 minutes or so after finding out that he was killed, we started taking fire from the village that we just came out of. Clearly the Afghan soldiers who were taking the lead, clearing those buildings and looking for weapons and all that stuff, they missed a bunch. Because it was small arms fire, it was RPGs, it was like, how do you miss a freaking RPG? Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it,
Yep.
and so I kind of had to stuff all that, the grief, the sadness, all the emotions that I was going through with the loss of my brother. I had to kind of stuff that all down, because I had guys that I was in charge of that I had to go lead, and I had to make sure I made it home too. For a brief moment, I was so angry with the world, with Afghanistan, with the people of that country, that I just wanted to go and kill everybody. I wanted to kill anyone who had anything to do with Afghanistan. I wanted to kill every single person who was in that village. I wanted to kill all the Afghan soldiers who were with us. I wanted our interpreters. I hated everybody who had anything to do with Afghanistan. And it was like this brief moment where I just had this kind of Rambo moment in my head that I was like, I'm just going to go down guns ablaze and kill everybody. And I realized if I was to do something stupid and selfish like that, that my son would grow up without a father, my wife would be a widow, my parents would lose 2 children in the same day. Like, the guys that I was supposed to be leading would now be without a leader, and God forbid something happened to them, or they had to come and drag my dead body out of wherever it came from, and something happened to them. Like, I was like, okay, I can't do that. I got to get my head right. So I just stuffed it all down, and I was like, the grief will be there when this is over. And I just got to get my head on right. And it was tough. That was probably, honestly, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was stuff that down and just focus on the mission. Fight back, whatever way we could. But but that was, especially being so soon after hearing about his
Yeah.
death, really didn't even have a chance to process. Like 15 or 20 minutes or so. It's not
You're
really a
probably
lot of
still in
time to
shock.
process. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
You know. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. You know, and that is something that again, I know we've said this several times. You know, that is something that people that have never served um, cannot understand. That you don't always get what you need at that time. You know,
right.
as little as, if you're told to do something that you don't understand, you still do it, and then you ask why. You
Yeah.
know, and in
Yeah,
this
I mean,
situation,
hopefully it comes with the why with it, but sometimes there's not time for that. Sometimes it's just like, hey, this needs to be done now. Go do it.
yep,
And that was one of those situations where it's
yep,
like, hey, there's no safe space for me to go hide in while everybody else goes and fights. And even if there was, I wouldn't want to go in it.
right,
I had a job to do. I had soldiers that I needed to lead. I had people that I needed to be there for that were depending on me being there. Now, of course, if something was to have had happened to me, they would. I trusted my guys enough that they would be able to figure out how to do the job without me. But they shouldn't have to. Like
right,
that's like worst case scenario.
yep,
That they could do that. Um, I didn't want that in that moment. I didn't want them to have to figure that kind of stuff out.
yeah.
Right then and there. Um, so I was like, I have to get back into this. You know.
And there's so many emotions that go with this. When the firefight's over with, you've got the adrenaline that's still flowing, and it slowly comes out. But now you've still got grief, and
Yeah.
and in that moment now your brain is back to thinking about the news that happened prior,
Hmm.
you know, and you're still on edge from the firefight.
Yeah.
And so all of these emotions are going through you at the same time, and you now have to start processing.
That's right.
And man, so did they get you out of there
They did.
shortly
Yeah.
after that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't remember the exact time frame, how long it was, but a short while after the firefight kind of cleared up, they called in. They actually called in a couple birds for not only to get me out of there, but there was a couple injuries. Luckily, no casualties on that mission. There's no Americans or even the Afghan soldiers that were with us. None of them were killed. Um,
Hmm.
thank God. Um, but they called in a couple of Blackhawks to come and take out some of the injured, um, and me, and that was. Took a little while because the Blackhawks, they didn't want to come in if it was still a hot area. They didn't want to end up
Right.
getting shot out of the sky or anything like that. So they did a few passes to kind of make sure everything was safe. So I was actually kind of funny. I was the one who was supposed to throw the smoke grenade to signal the landing zone for them, and I was told, okay, someone who had the radio, I had turned over my radio and other things like that because I was going to be leaving and they needed it more than me. Um, and so someone yelled over to me, okay, they're landing. So I pull the pin on the grenade and I'm about to throw it, and I get to about here, and they're like, hold on, don't throw it yet. They're doing another pass, and I'm like, okay. I got the pin in one hand. I got the grenade. I'm still holding the spoon, thankfully. Uh,
Yeah.
but I'm like, okay, if my hand slipped just a little bit, I'm like, I don't know, did it slip? Like, if it did, I'm getting a face full of smoke in like
Yep.
in just a couple seconds here. It was like this little ticking time bomb. I'm like, I don't know, did it slip? But luckily it didn't. And then when they finally did come in, I threw the smoke grenade. Um, but I was holding so tight. So I don't know if like you guys know this or not, but like in those kind of situations, a lot of times what you do with one hand, you'll also do with the other hand. And so I was holding so tight on the smoke grenade that I was also holding so tight on the ring that I pulled. And I didn't realize it until afterwards. But so I threw the smoke grenade. Um, I didn't realize it until afterwards. I was already in the helicopter. I was still holding the ring to the smoke grenade. And I was like, okay, I don't know why I'm still holding this, but I'm just going to hang on to it. And I actually have, it's on my keychain right now. Like I still have it.
That is
Um,
awesome.
but I was like, I don't know why I'm still holding this. Like I just looked down, I just see a ring in my glove, and I was like, what the hell is this? I was like, oh yeah, that's right, that's from the smoke grenade. um, but but yeah, so I remember. So we're flying out of that area. Still, I was so mad. That anger came back. I was like, we were flying over like these little villages along the way, these little just random houses here and there. Um, and I just remember looking down, thinking, someone shoot at us because I want to just unload on you guys. I wanted to. I still had that anger and that rage, and that it was I was not in a good place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they flew me out of there. That was, towards the evening, kind of, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 o'clock at night, or so. By the time I got to, they got me to Bagram, um, and met with the brigade leadership there, and they kind of briefed me on what had happened with my brother to the extent that they knew. They still hadn't gotten the full reports and everything, but they knew enough that they were able to give me some information, about that incident. And I asked if I could call home to my family, and they said no. And the reason why was because they weren't sure whether or not my family had received notification of my brother's death. And so there's kind of a communications blackout when something like this happens,
Yep.
and they don't allow you to call home, even if you're someone like me who is family or whatever. They don't allow anybody to call home because they want the proper notification to come through that knock at the door, the quote unquote what they call it, the knock at the door, with the military officers come to the door and deliver the notification, usually with a chaplain or people like that. So so I wasn't able to call home. So I stayed at Bagram overnight. The next morning, they had the ramp ceremony where they brought my brother and the other soldier who was killed, Tristan Southworth. They brought both of them onto the plane that was going to bring them out of Afghanistan. And I had never been a part of a ramp ceremony. For folks who don't know what that is, I kind of equate it to like the military's version of a wake. Before a funeral, people come through, they pay their respects. There's kind of a receiving line that I was a part of, and I was super impressed by just the sheer number of people who came through, from not just American military, Polish, German, civilian contractors. Like there were people from all over the place who came through, paid their respects. I was just kind of floored that people would just come through like that. They didn't know either one of those folks, but they wanted to pay their respects and send them off the right way. And so that's that brings us up kind of to leaving Afghanistan. And so I was actually on the same flight as my brother, the transport plane that brought us to Kuwait, and then from Kuwait. From Kuwait, that's where we kind of parted ways. I'm not sure exactly what they did with him. I think they had mortuary affairs, did some work, autopsy maybe, or things along those lines. But then
usually go to Delaware.
Then he went to Delaware from there. But I continued my journey home from Kuwait, which was a miserable journey because I was traveling on flights full of other soldiers, but not with anybody that I knew. And so it was, I wasn't alone, but I was by myself, and I had nobody to talk to, nobody who understood what I was going through. Everybody on the plane was happy that they were going home, and I was I was like the one guy who was like angry as hell.
Yeah.
I was angry at the world. I not that I wanted to be, buddy buddy with anybody, but at least to have one person who understood what I was going through. Everybody else is laughing and joking, and I was just like, shut the hell up. Like, I don't want to hear this.
Yeah.
And I was that guy, that nobody probably wanted to be around anyways.
Yeah. So you make it back to the States.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming your brother's remains made it back probably 3 to 5 days after you got there.
Yeah, just about there. I forget the exact time frame when he got back, but it was somewhere around there. Yeah.
And did your unit send somebody to escort him back home?
So yeah, so he came in through Dover, and somebody, and I don't know who specifically it was, but somebody did escort him home. It was actually on a private jet, like one of those small, probably 15, 20 seat type jets that brought him in. And so we met him in Connecticut, where they flew him from Dover. We opted not to go down to Dover. We did have that option, available to us, but we opted not to, just because we thought it was more important to be with family, than, we're more useful to each other than we would have been to him at that point. So, so we stayed in Connecticut and, received him there. After getting his body from the, the airport, we planned a kind of route around our hometown of driving by places that were of significance to him, like the farm that his girlfriend's family had, in our high school, and a couple of our old houses, and the old neighborhoods that we lived in, the baseball fields that we played at, and all that kind of stuff. And that was kind of cool. But the coolest thing to me is the state police shut down the entire highway between the airport and our house, which was probably normally a 45-minute drive or so, from our house to the airport. And we got there in probably 20 minutes because we had the entire highway was cleared. So it was like smooth sailing. One car actually tried to get on the highway, and a cop pulled ahead and pulled them over, and was like, nope, you're not going anywhere right now, which was kind of funny to see. But all the overpasses, there were fire trucks with giant American flags draped over the side, and the firefighters saluting as we drove by, which, it just showed that people cared, that people actually, they didn't know who he was. They didn't care. And I don't say that in a mean way.
Right.
They just know that he sacrificed himself for everything that we have. Like, look around how great this country is. And it's because of folks like that who are willing to make a sacrifice. And so they came out and paid their respects in the way that they know how. And it was special to me, for any of those firefighters who might hear this. Like, it's important. It means a lot to the family.
Absolutely.
And
Especially
to
when it's not forced,
oh
these
yeah,
people did it all by themselves.
yep.
And you saying that, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, go ahead.
made me think of a time when I came back, and the plane landed, and we were in Bangor, Maine, and we all get out waiting for the plane to refuel and all that stuff, right, before we then disperse from there to our civilian flights to go on leave, right?
Yeah.
And the USO lines us all up, and they're going to walk us to where we go, right? And as soon as we start walking, the USO starts clapping and screaming, the guy in front of us, making everybody else do it. And that always bothered me, man, because I was like, you're forcing these people to do it, not that they really wanted to. Now they feel obligated. They're the dick if they didn't.
Right.
And so it doesn't feel real at that point. And to see something like you're describing, man, that is real compassion. That's people that really do appreciate, and people that really do care.
Yeah, and even the day of his funeral, we left the church, we went driving to the cemetery. As we were driving, like, it was highly publicized. There were media all over the place, all this kind of stuff. People knew what was going on that day in our town. As we were driving by, people pulled over side of the road, got out of their car, hand over their heart, or if they're a veteran, they saluted as we drove by. And I was like that wasn't forced either. It's like that person was on their way to go get groceries, and they happened to see this caravan of the funeral procession coming by, and that's just what they did. They just pulled over, and they're like, I'm here now. I'm paying my respects. And that was special to me.
Yeah.
It did get, I mentioned it did get a lot of media publicity. When I came home, we drove down my parents' street. We went to my parents' house first, and their street was lined with news fans, for all television, radio, newspaper, all these people looking for an interview. And at first that pissed me off.
Yeah.
I was like, these people are vultures. They just here to pick apart the story and get their little juicy bits and then go fly away or whatever, and
Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping veterans turn into rock stars every single day. You can learn more about what Operation Encore is doing by going over to their website at www.operationencore.org. That is www.operationencore.org. If you can give them a hand, just click that little donate button or follow all of their social medias and learn exactly what they are doing to change the lives of our veterans every single day.
Then we got to my parents' house, and I'm all fired up. And there was a public affairs officer who was at my parents' house to kind of help coordinate all that. And he said he'll kick them all out if we want, or he'll help coordinate whatever we want. And he said, but realize this: they're going to run the story one way or the other, whether they have us to interview or they don't. And he said they can go to a grocery store parking lot or some mom who's picking up her kid from school, and just go and talk to them and say, hey, what do you think about this? And they're going to, of course, what are they going to say? Oh yeah, it's sad. Oh, he's a hero, blah, blah, blah. No meat, no substance, nobody's going to know anything, and they're going to forget about it tomorrow. He said, but if you guys go and you guys talk, if you choose to, you can actually tell people who he was and what kind of person he was, and that people will listen to. And so I kind of, at that point, I was like, okay, this isn't about me and my feelings, how I feel about these people. When we're deployed, we're always told, like, no comment, like, you just don't talk to the media, basically, I was like, this isn't about me anymore. It doesn't really matter how I feel about it. This is about him. Because if we don't go and talk to these people right now, as much as I hate doing it, he dies and his memory dies with him. And that's it. There's no coming back from that. And so we did all so many media interviews for that week or two, like right after his funeral, but then the whole year after and up till today. I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now had all that not happened. And who knows, we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation right now, And so I'll continue doing these interviews and talking about who he was and what kind of person he was forever, until the day I'm dead or can't talk anymore for some reason, like I'll keep doing these things. But that's kind of what you have to deal with when you come back and things like that get highly publicized.
Yeah, man, that's a lot. Holy cow. So the funeral and everything happens, and at some point you did go back? Were you deployed back again, or did you stay back till your unit came back?
I was supposed to go back. I actually, when I left Kuwait, they gave me orders for I think it was 10 days or 2 weeks or something like that, where they gave me that kind of leave to come home for the funeral. And when we were at the funeral. The governor of Connecticut was at the funeral, and she came up to our family and told us that she was going to order that I do not go back. And so for the listeners who aren't familiar with the National Guard, in addition to the President of the United States being kind of a commander of chief over the armed forces, the governor is the commander in chief over the state National Guard. So we were, the Connecticut National Guard, and so she was able to issue that order that I stay home, and so I ended up not going back. I was intending on going back,
Right.
Which was kind of a mixed blessing. Like it was good that I was home with family. I probably would not have been very effective as a soldier over there, because I kind of got to the point where I just didn't give a shit anymore. But while I was home, there was some stuff going on at the Pakistan border, in Torkham, where I was stationed, and it was on CNN and Fox News and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, holy crap, like that's where my guys are. And I'm watching this on the news at home. I'm like, that made me feel like the biggest piece of crap. It's like, if something goes off and one of my guys gets hurt or injured or killed, and I'm here, it's like, how can I forgive myself for not going back? I don't know. Like that was kind of the feeling that I had at the time. So like I said, it was kind of a mixed blessing.
Yes. Yeah. I can see how heavy the survivor's guilt would be there.
Yeah. Big time.
So I know at some point you wrote a book.
Yes.
Did that come after the National Guard or while you were still in?
Yeah. So a little bit of both. So when I first got back home from Afghanistan, I started writing down, just journaling, like notes about things that happened, places I was at, people that were involved, that type of stuff, just more informational type stuff, because I knew, over time your memory starts playing tricks on you, and you remember things that didn't actually happen, or remember it in a different way or whatever. And so I wanted to remember the details. I knew my kids would eventually have questions, and I want to answer them correctly. And who knows, maybe I'd be on a podcast someday, even though those didn't, I don't think those even existed at the time. And I'd be having to recall some of this stuff. And so I just jotted down notes, never really intending to make it into a book. It was just kind of notes. And so a few years ago, around the time that I started the podcast, actually, kind of rediscovered those notes and kind of was going back through it. And I was like, this could be something more than just notes that are collecting dust. And so I started dabbling and kind of kicking around different ideas about, putting it into a book and making it into something that will outlive me, something that my kids could read. So it'll answer the question that they had about who their uncle was, what I did while I was in the Army. But also I wanted it to be a book that people who maybe didn't understand the military, gives them better understanding. I know it's just from my perspective, my family's point of view, but that kind of gives you a better understanding of the type of sacrifices that are made in the military. It's not everybody who joins the military that shares in a sacrifice like that, and on such a intimate and personal way. But it happens. And it happens sometimes with close friends who you might serve with. And so I wanted to give those folks a glimpse into it, but I also wanted the veterans and service members who might read it to kind of learn from my mistakes, because I screwed up when I came home. Like I didn't handle the grief, like that grief that I shoved down that day during that firefight. I didn't pick it back up in a healthy way. I picked it up. I was drinking. I was like to the point of stupid excess. Like I couldn't sleep. And so I would just drink until I passed out. And that was the way I kind of dealt with it. And then I wake up in the morning, hungover and having a miserable day because I was hungover. And then that night I have trouble getting back to sleep. So I drink more and I, whatever. And then, because I was hungover, I'd be, energy drinks and coffee and all this stuff, trying to wake myself up so I can get on with the day. But those would go later and later in the day, and that would just make the sleep even worse. Vicious cycle, and affected my mood. I was angry all the time. I was angry at everything, like the littlest things. My kid was, he was about a year old at this time, and he'd spill something on the floor, and I'd be yelling at him. And it's like, he's a 1-year-old, 1.5, 2 years old. That's what they do. They're kids, but I was just stupid angry at everything. It got to the point where I didn't recognize who I was anymore. Like, before I went to Afghanistan, like, hardly anything really set me off or made me feel like I needed to yell and scream at people or anything like that. Like, I was a pretty easygoing guy. The day that the worst, I know yelling at my son was bad, but the worst for me was this day. My dog, she was in our bedroom. Our bedroom had a bathroom right in the bedroom, and tile floor for the bathroom. And this is important for you'll realize in a second. A tile floor for the bathroom, but a white carpet in our bedroom. And the dog was sick, and she was standing right at the edge of the bathroom and the bedroom, and threw up right on the white carpet. And I was like, 6 inches this way, it would have been an easy couple paper towels. This whole thing would have been cleaned up, no problem. Now I got to get a steam cleaner. The rug's probably stained. And I was just so mad as I was down on the floor trying to clean it up, and the dog came over and all that kind of stuff. I just pushed her into the bathroom, and she slid across the floor, and because tiles, she couldn't like get a grip or whatever. And I remember looking at her as she's sliding across the floor, thinking, what the hell did I just do? Like, the dog's sick. Like, that's not going to make anything better.
Yeah.
Who the hell am I that I think I can do that to a dog who unconditionally loved me, and I didn't deserve that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But she was like, would sleep at my feet, and she would be like there with me all the time. Even in her later years, when she got older, I worked in a home office, and she would come into my office, and she'd just sleep literally on my feet, always by my side. Really didn't want to be apart from me. It's like, I didn't deserve that. I treated this dog like crap. And it was at that point that I realized, like, something has to change. I can't be this kind of guy. I can't be this kind of father to my son or to my wife. I can't be that kind of husband, or, even to the dog. I can't be that kind of person. That's when I decided to get help, because, like, it wasn't getting better. A lot of us guys, we think to ourselves, oh yeah, I'm tough. I can handle this. I'll be okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Maybe, but also maybe not. At some point, if you're not getting better, you're gonna have to do something, and you're gonna have to go talk to somebody, and suck up that pride, and just go do it.
Yep. I think it's always one of those. I think I call it everybody's aha moment. Everybody has a different aha moment where it hits them.
Yeah.
And the stars and everything has aligned enough for you to get that moment of clarity. Because the one thing a lot of people don't understand is everybody knows there's something wrong, but the person that has something wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for me, when I got out, I was not who I was, and I didn't know it. I knew I hated myself. I knew I didn't have anything good to say about myself.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how bad I was treating my family, how miserable I was just to people I didn't even know. Similar to you, I was angry all the time. It didn't matter what it was about. And sometimes the anxiety would be so hot, so built up in me, and it would explode out, and it would turn into an argument or a fight with somebody.
Yeah.
And I had one of those aha moments too. And luckily I reached out for some help, not a gun and something like that,
Yeah.
And for everybody, it's a different thing. It's a different moment. And, the good news is that you realized it and you were able to get help. Now,
That's
the
right.
bad news is you're going to have to put in the work. And
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's not easy making that phone call and admitting that you need help. But putting that work is hard too.
it is.
You don't just go walk into a therapist's office and walk out magically cured. There's no magic pill that you take that
Nope.
instantly everything's better. It takes work. It takes time. As a matter of fact, I still go to counseling, and this is 13 years later. I still have issues that I deal with, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Like, why? Like, why would I be afraid to admit that I go and talk to somebody about things that are wrong, the things that I have going on in my life? To me, it just doesn't make sense. Like the attitude that we used to have was that you're crazy or something's wrong with you. It's like, no, it's just like a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. And that's what I'm dealing with. And it's like, okay, well, you got to get help for that. Your car can normally drive just fine down the road, but there's a big pothole and it, screws up the underside, you drive over a curb or something like that. The car's gonna be screwed up. Okay, well, you can't expect the car to be driving just like normal. It's gonna be clunking along, and something's gonna be wrong with it. You got to go get it fixed.
Yep.
It's the same thing,
Yep. Absolutely, man. So the book that you wrote, it's about honoring your brother and helping other people, kind of that may be going through similar stuff. Have you had anybody reach out to you and say, whether they be a veteran or not, grief is grief, regardless. And have you had anybody reach out and say, man, that book really resonated with me?
Yeah, I've had a ton of people who've reached out. I mean, some of the people, they shared a little bit about themselves. Usually it's just like a, hey, I kind of get where you're coming from kind of thing. They had a similar experience. So I don't get, all the time, all the details of, kind of who they were, or, what their backgrounds were or whatever. But they'll reach out and they'll tell me how, kind of help them kind of process and deal with some of their own stuff. And so, I'm grateful, I'm grateful that they found the book, but also that I had it in me to actually write the book. I mean, it's not, in ways it was sort of therapeutic to write the book, but in other ways it was torture to do it, to relive some of those things. And part of the book has very specific details of what happened to my brother the day he was killed, from the point of view of the soldiers who were with him. We managed to get the sworn statements from all of them, and we were able to kind of piece together what happened that day. And I put that in the book, and that was tough, because I had heard the story from a couple of the guys, here and there, but piecing all those pieces, there's probably 25 sworn statements I went through, and piecing all that together from all their different perspectives did a couple things. One, it kind of gave a full picture of what happened, but it also made me realize how different perspectives totally change some of the story. Like, you could read one and you could read the other, and it's like, are you guys actually talking about the same event? Like, it was tough to kind of figure out, okay, oh, that's what that person was talking about. Just different positions. That one person was looking at one thing, one person was looking at another, heard something different. It's just, different perspectives kind of made it kind of interesting to see.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand combat speed is, it may seem slow in the moment, but what's really happening is fast. I mean,
very fast.
Those firefights are not these like you see in the movies where they last for hours and hours. It may feel that way, but most of them it's hit and run,
Yep.
and so when that happens in your mind, it seems like everything is slow motion, and your body and your mind and adrenaline is so focused on what's going on, you're going to pick up small details.
Yep.
And when you first get back and you first do that out brief, maybe those details aren't there. But when the adrenaline wears off and you're replaying it over your mind, then you're going to start picking up the little things that your mind seen, took the picture, put it in the back, and kept going because it wasn't the thread. It wasn't something at that moment. It was a
Yep.
piece of that puzzle.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing for somebody like yourself who's reading the sworn statements, that you probably even had a better chance of understanding than even your family members because of being in those situations.
Yeah.
So I could see how hard that would be to try to get this image of what happened.
Yeah.
That would be super tough, man. Well, brother, if you don't mind, why don't I give you the floor and you tell everybody about your podcast, where they can find it, where can they buy the book, and all that good stuff, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the podcast, again, Drive On Podcast is the show. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. I put the video on YouTube and on Twitter or X, whatever they're calling it now. But yeah, so you can find it there. The podcast is geared towards helping out folks who are connected to the military, be it service members, their families, veterans, caretakers, folks like that who are connected to the military, and do that in a few ways. I share stories from other veterans of some of the struggles and successes that they've had, and the ways that they've overcome their struggles and how they got to their successes, to give hope to folks who are out there who maybe are isolating themselves and feel like they're all alone and nobody else understands what they're going through. Okay, well, here's a story from somebody else who does understand it, right? But also share resources from folks like nonprofits, individuals who provide services to veterans and things like that, that are maybe not as well known. We all know about the VA and types of services that they have to offer, but there are things outside of the VA that you can do a lot of times at no cost to the veteran or their family or whoever, that maybe even more effective than what the VA has to offer, because everybody's going to be different in whatever you're going through. It might be a trauma that you experience. It might be a physical or mental health related condition, or even financial or educational type resources. We cover all of those things to help the veterans and the service members and anyone connected to the military with whatever struggles that they might be going through, because we are stronger when we are working together. And there are so many people out there who want the veterans and in the military community to succeed. We have a lot of great people in this community. And, I try to shed light on all these people and all the great things that they are doing, so that way that there is hope, that you're not alone, that the things that you're going through are not too big to handle. You can get through whatever it is that you might be going through.
All right, man. Yeah, you are right, and you are living proof of what I say every day, man. That the veteran spirit is just going to accomplish the mission, and
Yeah.
the trickle effect of what has happened from your podcast. A little bit of self therapy for yourself, and as you got counseling and some help, and it allowed you to bring the book out and the podcast out, that is reaching other people and trickling down and helping other people as well.
Right.
And man, my hat's off to you, brother.
Thank you.
You went through something that there's, I don't even want to say that I can imagine, because I can't. That has to be the the toughest thing to happen, because I know how hard combat is. I've been there. I can't even imagine losing a family member at the same time during combat.
Right.
That is super tough, man.
Um,
Really, go ahead.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention the book. It's available on Amazon. I mean, I'm sure most people figure that out, but that's where you can find it. If anybody, for whatever reason, this was a weird thing when I first published the book, people are asking me for signed copies, and Amazon doesn't have that functionality built into their self-publishing platform there. So if anyone wants a signed copy of the book, you can go to SurvivingSonbook.com and you can order a book there, or I think I have it on the podcast website as well, the driveonpodcast.com, the one that's scrolling on the bottom of the screen there. You can do that, and happy to sign a copy and send it to folks as well. Or you can get it right on Amazon. You get it much quicker that way. You probably get it the next day or something like that. So yeah, check it out.
Awesome, man. Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna put you in the green room and close the show, and I'll be with you in one moment. All right?
Sure thing. Yep.
All right, man. All right, everybody, man. I can't even imagine. That was a grueling, worst case scenario in my opinion. And the awesome things that came from this. There were some great takes that came from this episode. He definitely showed how the warrior spirit is out there. The camaraderie between foreign country warriors that were showing their respects for another fallen warrior that they didn't even know. I mean, there was the bond between us. It goes way past. Since I've been out, I've even learned it goes way past just our own. It crosses borders into our allies and other people. So I hope y'all go take a chance and buy his book. Get the full story, and if you want the signed copy, you can get the signed copy through his webpage, or you can go to Amazon and get the regular book. I know I'm going to make sure I got a copy, and I hope y'all do the same thing. Follow his podcast. Make sure you subscribe. Leave him a review. It helps all of us podcasters a ton. I appreciate y'all. I hope to see y'all next week, man. Enjoy the show, and as always, y'all be safe.